In this lesson, we're going to be talking about headers in jQuery Mobile. Now here we have a very simple header. All we have inside is an h1 tag. Now you can use an h1 tag, h2, h3, all the way down to h6 as long as it's a header tag. However, it's good to know that unless you manually change some of the CSS, jQuery Mobile will style all of the different header elements, whether they're h1s or h6s, exactly the same. The reason you might want to use an h2 instead of an h1 is for semantic flexibility. In other words, you want the computer to know that, let's say, this h2 over here is less weighty than this h1. That allows search bots to more efficiently index your site, and it also allows accessibility tools to do a better job because you're giving them more information. Now let's go ahead and cover how to add buttons. Typically, we only have 1 or 2 buttons in headers. So let's just go ahead and add 2 buttons. So first of all, we'll add an anchor tag, and let's go ahead and link this one to Google. href equals google.com. Now jQuery Mobile will know that this should be a button because it's an anchor tag inside of a header element. So you don't need to put data role equals button. However, I am going to go ahead and add an icon to it. I like the gear, so I'll put that one in there. And when we refresh, sure enough, now we have a button to Google up in the upper left-hand corner. Now jQuery Mobile will, by default, put the first button in the upper left-hand corner. The second button it'll put in the right-hand corner. There we have it. And I'll just go ahead and also say data icon pos equals right. That'll move that icon over to the right-hand side. So that looks pretty interesting. Now it's actually that simple to add buttons to your header. So now let's go ahead and play around with it a bit. I'm going to take this anchor tag here and I'm going to comment it out. Now remember earlier on, I said that it'll assume that this first anchor tag should be on the left-hand side. If we want to force it to be on the right-hand side, we can actually add a class to the anchor tag. So I'm going to say class equals, and I'm going to add UI button right. That's going to force that button to be off to the right-hand side instead of its default on the left. So that's how you specify explicitly the position of these anchor tags. I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and I'll bring this other button back. Now let's say that we want to create a header without this header text in here. We don't want to say I'm a header, but we do want to have an upper left button and an upper right hand button. If we just go ahead and remove the h1, then the header doesn't have a height anymore. So what we actually have to do is add in a span with a certain class, or really any element. Typically, if you have to add in an element just to fill in some space or something like that, you would use a span or a div. So this span, we're going to give a class of UI title. And that class will ensure that this toolbar gets a height. Now, a really common thing that people like to do is have this upper left-hand button be a back button. So I can say href equals, and we'll just give it an empty hash like that. And we can say data rel equals back. That's going to turn it into a back button. So instead of going to a specific location, it's actually going to go back in history. So if I hit back, it'll bring me back to my last page. Additionally, we may want to change that icon so it looks better. Now, because jQuery Mobile doesn't have support across every single browser out there, just the main ones, if we want it to work in the browsers that jQuery Mobile provides grade C support for, then we need to actually provide a meaningful href here. So, for example, we could manually set the path of that href based on what the back button should go back to. If you don't care about grade C browsers, and there aren't a ton of them, then you can just go ahead and leave it like this. And then you don't have to write a bunch of code to figure out where the back button should go. You can just let jQuery Mobile figure it out using the history stack. So as you can see, you have a lot of flexibility with what you do with your headers using jQuery Mobile. And it's not a ton of code either. So that concludes this lesson on headers.